Hi, I'm Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation, and I began this process that we work with at the Marriage Foundation over 20 years ago. I was a divorce mediator first, and then I shifted because I realized there was something really big that was missing in marriage counseling, because all of my referrals when I was a mediator came from marriage counselors. In other words, they failed. And what was missing, and still is a positive approach to marriage. Everything about marriage counseling is about digging up the past. Your past as an individual, what's going on, what's wrong, how can we solve this? And it's crazy. When your marriage is really working well, there's no problems to solve. Not that you're not working on together. So this topic, which is 7 tips to improve communication in your relationship, is an excellent topic, and I'll tell you why. When I shifted my practice over to saving and helping marriages, I would always ask, well, what's going on? 80%, really, 80% said we're having trouble with our communication. And in the very beginning, I thought, wow, this is the biggest problem. And because my past experience was working as a consultant to help people with their communication, I thought this is going to be easy. But it wasn't long before I discovered communication is important. Don't get me wrong, it's really important. And learning these tips is going to really help you. But the real problem that people have is they don't know how to be married. You don't even recognize or think about the fact that you got married in order to be happier every single day of your life. And you got married to experience something you can't experience pretty much anywhere else, which is unconditional love. Because the world is so tough. But in this, what I call the sacred space of marriage, the two of you are able to make it a unique, positive, loving, fulfilling experience. So these 7 tips will definitely improve your relationship. There is no question about it whatsoever. So let's get started with this. Number 1, feel grateful for the opportunity to communicate. Most of us communicate only when we want something. Isn't it true? Be honest now. We want something, and when we don't get what we want, we go, we have bad communication. How many times do you actually begin a conversation, your communication, with something that is not asking for something? You have this incredible ability to communicate with your spouse. It's an amazing opportunity, but you don't take advantage of that part of it. So you go into your communication wanting to fulfill some mundane, you could call it a need if you want, but in most cases, it's a desire. Of course, sometimes there's a need, but mostly it's a desire. Usually it's to complain about something. Generally, it's to ask for something. It's not being grateful. So if you decide, before I speak to my lovely wife or my handsome husband, I'm going to remind myself that the person who I am with is special to me. I can say things to them about my innermost love that I can't say to anyone else. I can use this time to open up my heart. I can't do that with other people because they'll squish it. They'll squish your heart. Be grateful for the opportunity to communicate with the person who you've chosen as your soulmate. Be grateful. Remind yourself. So the first communication should be with you. I am so fortunate. I am so blessed. Be grateful. Do you know that gratitude is the most beautiful attitude because it's an expression of love? It's an expression of love. And isn't that what you want in your marriage? So that's number one. Remind yourself of how grateful you are that you have this ability to communicate, this opportunity to communicate. Number two, you know what? I bet you've heard this before, but I'm going to expound on it. Number two is to be a patient listener. It's a very unfortunate thing that we are not taught basic communication growing up. So we don't know about the pitfalls. We don't know how to enter into a conversation. We don't know what we should say, what we shouldn't say. In the courses that we have prepared at the Marriage Foundation, there's a one for women and there's one for men. Communication is a big part of the course. It's not the main part. It's not the most important part, but it's a big part. One of the things that I teach people is that most people, probably yourself included, communicate meaning I have something to say, not what do you have to say. And so people tend to not be patient listeners. They are waiting for the opportunity so that they could express what they want to express. In many cases, people only hear things in the context of how it applies to them. Well, this is, in other words, you hear something and you go, oh yeah, that reminds me of, and they kind of take the communication and take it. They don't listen. People don't listen. They just can't wait to say what they want to say. And it's amazing how much you can learn about your spouse, about your partner, by listening. All you need to do is you'll hear in your mind, because all of our habits in communication are like that, and they want to steal the conversation. So when you see your mind is coming up with these things, stop it. Just tell your mind, you'll have your turn, but listen. You may learn something. There may be something there for you, and what you really want to listen for, you want to listen for what's important to your spouse. What can I do to please my spouse? Do you know what your spouse's favorite color is? Do you know what your spouse's favorite scent is? Do you know what your spouse loves and doesn't love? Have you been a good listener? This is particularly true for men. Men are not typically good listeners. They want to hear what their job assignment is and go do it. Hold back. Hold back. You will be amazed. And instead of being ready, set, go, it's my turn to communicate, listen with the intention of learning something about your spouse that gives you the ability to do something for them. because it's all about love. You know, your marriage is all about love. It is the very foundation of your marriage, is love. How are you expressing that love if you're not learning about your spouse's desires, needs? Listening will give you insight. Not that whatever they're saying is always what they're feeling, but you'll figure that out too. And you'll be much better at being able to be there for your spouse, your husband or your wife, either way. Number 3, this is huge. This is especially big for men, but it's also big for women too. Number 3 is remember that your spouse doesn't want advice. Even when they're asking for advice, they don't want advice. They want support. They want acknowledgement. They want recognition. In communication, it's very important that you look past the surface. Again, being a loving spouse means understanding the needs and desires of your spouse. So you have to listen and not jump in right away with a fix it. Oh, you could do this. Oh, you could do that. Oh, I've been there and here's what I discovered. You don't have to do that. In fact, when you do that, and you've been in this situation yourself, you've been on that side of it, when you have spoken not just to your spouse but to others, and they have a fix it, it's not what you want. You just want to be heard. You want to express yourself. You have ideas of how to fix it. Even if you ask for advice, you're not really asking for advice, you're asking for feedback so that you can expand your perspective. So when you're in that position, never give advice. You know, at the Marriage Foundation, it's a rule. We have the ability here, we've set it up where people could write in and ask for marriage help. You just go to the website and you go to Ask a Counselor and people write in. Well, our counselors are not allowed to give advice. That may sound crazy to you, but what we're able to do is we're able to give assurance. We're able to give another way of looking at things. We're able to guide them to something that they need, perhaps. In many, many cases, people write in because their marriage is on the verge of collapse. And then the counselors will recommend, if it's a woman who writes in, they'll recommend the course for women. If it's a man who writes in, the course for men, oftentimes. Sometimes it's not so serious, and then we'll suggest one of the books, which gives a very good kind of a schematic, a layout of what marriage is, so people understand marriage better, because we don't learn that in our society. We didn't learn it growing up. We don't know what marriage is. Okay, so remember, never give advice. The counselors aren't allowed to give advice. A person is fully contained. We have at our fingertips, all of us, the deepest wisdom there is. We all have that because we're souls. So it's innate. It's part of the package. So trust that who is ever in need has that ability. Just support them. Let them know they're going to be fine. They'll come up with a good answer, a good way of fixing it. All right, number 4. This is a lot like number 3, which is to understand your spouse's communication from their point of view, not from your point of view. In order for you to do that, you have to listen well. You have to take into account who they are as a person. You have to understand how they're seeing what they're talking about. That is an act of love to do that. You're not just a sounding board. Of course you want to be a sounding board, but that's not just what you are, because you want to always look for an opportunity to be loving, to be supportive. So you can't take what they're saying and transpose it into your point of view. You have to understand it from their point of view. Remember, everything in marriage is about love, love, love. It's that simple. Okay, number 5. Be positive. You know, you have to do this for yourself sometimes. Although we're not trained to do this, we should be. Whatever comes our way in life should never be seen as traumatic, as terrible, as bad. Everything that comes our way should be seen as an opportunity, a golden opportunity to recognize internally what are our flaws that we need to change. What can we change about ourselves that would really help us? Also, our attachment. Why are we feeling the gravity? So when someone is communicating with you, when your spouse is communicating with you, no matter how negative it is, look for a way to be positive. An example would be, wow, I just ran into this old friend of mine and they're doing really well and I'm not doing really well and I'm a little bit jealous, but screw them and blah, blah, blah. You know, the mind is like that. It goes off on these tangents. So your role would be to say, are you kidding me? You're an amazing person. Look what you have accomplished in your life. Look at the challenges that you have faced. Yeah, they're doing great. Good. I'm happy for them, and you should be happy for them too, although don't ever say you should be. I take that back. But they should be. So when that happens to you, you should be happy for anyone who is successful. Find a way to be positive in your communication. Doesn't mean, obviously, if someone dies and they're telling you about that, you have to put off being positive. But even in those cases, you could say, wow, they're going to move on to such a better place. They really worked at it in their life. And you've always looked for a way to make something positive in your communication. Uplifting might be another word to use. Uplift, positive, improved upon. We don't want to lead dreary lives. We have the innate capacity for happiness, and we have free will, and we have volition. We have all the tools, and we're aware of happiness, and we're aware of love. So all of those tools should be used to achieve happiness and love. Don't you agree with that? Number 6. And this is just sort of an easy tip. This is the kind of thing when I was working as a consultant in businesses, this was just common. Number 6 is begin all your conversations with an acknowledgement or a compliment. It's just common sense, isn't it? Because what does that do? Well, look at the other side. If you start off your conversation with something negative, because we are the product of our bodies and our souls, kind of a blend, the body is always ready for survival. The drive to survive is innate in every single cell in your body. So your body is sending these messages to your mind: protect, protect, look for an opportunity, protect, protect, there's an opportunity, protect, protect. The soul is going, I love you. Everything is good. We're one with God. We're one with everything. Everything is fine. But it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, and so the body is pounding on the mind, protect, protect, and you start a conversation with, I see a problem here. Whoa! Right? Do you know anything about body language? It's more like this: defensiveness. So the opposite is also true. It's an equation. You start with a compliment. Wow, I was noticing what a great job you did on this particular thing. Opens up. So always begin your conversations with a compliment or an acknowledgement or both. You could take your time. You don't have to rush to the topic. You could take your time. And that time should be spent in sort of laying out the smooth, wonderful bridge of communication. Okay, number 7. It's sort of like number 1. Complete all of your conversations with gratitude. Again, how happy you should be to have someone with whom you can open up your heart. And now I want to talk about the highest degree of communication. We get married in order to be happy, and we get married in order to experience love. Your marriage is based on love. It's a very spiritual thing. Your marriage is a spiritual path. You're on your own spiritual path. Your partner is on their own spiritual path of marriage, and you're doing it together. It's great. But you're not taking advantage of it. You're not communicating about love, with love, and you don't need just your voice to do that or body language. There are subtler realms that we are now becoming aware of. 200 years ago, we couldn't talk about vibration, but now we can. And we know that we create the environment that surrounds us as an individual. We create that. You've seen people and you know, whoa, that guy is dark. Or, wow, look, he's glowing. We create that. And you create that in your marriage by always putting positive energy means love, into every action in order to achieve that. And this is the key to a happy marriage. This is the key. You can't just know what you're doing about marriage. You have to know what you're doing about yourself. You have to make your mind work in harmony with your heart so that you're pouring love and more sweetness at your spouse, at your partner, all the time. Because all of our actions spring from our thoughts and feelings. So unless you work on those and develop those, you won't progress in your marriage. And when I say progress in your marriage is meant to be so good that you're walking on cloud 9. You're just floating and you're happy all the time. And people go, well, that's not the way it is. Oh, yes, it is. When you know what you're doing. That would be like saying, go fly the plane and go from LA to New York. And someone says, well, you're going to fall out of the sky at some point. Why? It's mechanical. If you know what you're doing, it's not going to fall out of the sky. When you know what you're doing with your marriage, it's going to fly. It's going to keep both of you elevated. And it gets better every single day. Better than the previous day. And that's the truth. And we've been doing this. Well, I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I still get cards from people who I met with way back who are going, thank you. It's getting better and better. Imagine that. We are not mainstream at the Marriage Foundation. We're all about love and happiness. It's a very spiritual, positive approach to marriage. And it's something that you should look into. So subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment. I'm Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation. Thank you for spending your precious time with me. I appreciate you so much. You're an amazing person. God bless and take care.